All right, we're going to get started. The reason I'm so excited about this particular webinar is that this secret that I'm going to tell you about is incredibly important. And if you understand what I talk about today, I think you will honestly never have a problem getting a job. It's going to drastically improve your resume, and it could change the course of your entire life. And so this particular topic is something that I've actually given presentations on before, and in public presentations, not just on webinars, and some people that have heard this have told me that this particular thing I'm going to talk about today has literally changed the direction of our life. Incredibly important. And I think that once you understand this, you're really in for a treat, because it's just going to make a huge difference for you. And this is a live webinar, by the way. After I talk about this, I will take questions. We'll take a quick break after we go through this, and then come back and take questions. And you can ask questions about this or any other topics that you may be interested in. And for those of you that are new to these webinars, the questions, I think, are one of the most important parts of what we do when we talk about this stuff. And it was funny, just before a few minutes ago, before I started this, I started thinking about a real estate agent that I know in Malibu, California, which is where I work and live. And this is no ordinary real estate agent. He actually, I don't know, he makes over $1 billion in residential transactions a year, which commissions on something like that are the tens of millions of dollars. And this is a guy that used to be a massage therapist and got into the business when I believe he was giving Richard Gere a massage. And Richard Gere told him he wanted to sell his house. And he told him he had just got a real estate license, and one thing led from there. And this particular guy understands the secret and became, honestly, with no education and nothing, just incredibly wealthy, and so wealthy that he owns a heavy jet, which a heavy jet is, you see these business jets and things that fly around the world. And a heavy jet is almost like something like an airliner you would take to between cities, but outfitted with kitchens and couches and stuff. And this is someone that, when I thought about it, actually does nothing. His biggest skill is what I'm going to talk to you about today. So this is really powerful stuff. And I think that certainly it's not all about making money, but it's about selling products. It's about selling services. And most importantly, it's about selling yourself. So I go to marketing conferences, at least a couple of times a year. And I've always done that for the past several years. I've spent a lot of money attending these conferences. I certainly don't go to them as frequently as I used to when I was earlier in my career, but I've certainly been to them. And when I go to these conferences, people tend to talk about this thing called a unique selling proposition. And it's really something that people just keep talking about again and again. And then what I'm going to tell you about today is something where you to go to these marketing conferences and spend all your time, you would learn about this, and it would teach you quite a bit about marketing yourself. It'll teach you how to position yourself to be successful in your life, in your job, by doing the following different things. And it'll tell you I'm going to tell you how to get legal jobs that more people that are more qualified than you are unable to get. I'm going to tell you how to get legal jobs that you're not even qualified for. And then I'll show you how to appear like the most logical choice to be interviewed when you apply for any job. And then I'll also show you how to make every interviewer talk about you enthusiastically after interviewing you. And I realize this stuff sounds impossible, but it really isn't. It's not impossible, but it requires that you know something about marketing and that you understand this marketing concept, and then you apply it to yourself. And that concept is called a USP, or whatever you want to call it. It is basically something, if you were to go out and read a lot of marketing books and study marketing, this is the primary message that they would give you. Now, if you already know this concept, I'm going to tell you how it applies to you and how you can make this apply to yourself. And it's called USP, and a unique selling proposition, or whatever you want to call it. So this is the power of how you use that. And then I'll tell you a little bit about that. So leaving conferences, and when people that are talking about these USPs, they don't know, a lot of times know what they're talking about. So if you ever listen to self-improvement people, sometimes you'll go to different things. The people that can't do things often teach. But a lot of times at these conferences, what happens is people learn ideas and create courses, and then try to get people to pay for different online things or in in-person things. But most people are fairly clueless about a lot of this marketing stuff. But the reason that people keep showing up is that when a marketing concept works, it can be very effective. So you might go to 10 marketing conferences and not learn anything that works, but then you might go to one and you might find one thing that can really work. I know one guy, I meet all these people that are very successful all the time, and you can be very successful in the world doing things that you wouldn't even expect. Like I know one guy that created a tequila brand, and he created it in his 20s. A few years later, using this marketing concept, was able to create some buzz about it and sold it to a giant liquor company for several hundred millions of dollars. Now, this kind of money, people actually make this using these concepts. And another guy I know did the same thing when I was practicing law. He made several hundred million dollars doing the same thing. He wasn't an attorney, by the way. He was someone in their business. So this marketing stuff, if you understand it and you apply it in the business world, not just to yourself, people that are very good at applying this, and I've given you some examples from a massage therapist turned real estate agent to someone coming up with a liquor brand by spending a few $1,000s driving down to Mexico and learning. This is just really powerful stuff. So if people can make this kind of money doing these things and applying this concept, you have to think about what can you do with your career? Because at your level, you may be a partner in business trying to increase the amount of business that you have and get clients. You may be an associate trying to get clients. You may be an associate trying to get another job. You may be a law student trying to get your first job. Whatever you are, you can use this concept to market yourself and become very effective, because this is the most effective marketing thing there is. And if you apply the USP to your candidacy wherever you go, if you apply it to how you search for jobs, if you apply it to how you get business, if you apply it to how you get new jobs, this is going to help you. This term, by the way, when I talk about this term, every single thing that I say in almost every webinar, telling you to have your resume focused on one thing, telling you to remove things that don't have anything to do with the practice area that you're applying to, not confusing people with different types of jobs that aren't in the same practice area or that are in different practice settings. This is all I talk about. And this concept, if you understand it, is essential to getting any job you want that you're reasonably qualified for. It's essential to how you do your resume. It's essential to your cover letters. It's essential to the type of firms you apply to, all this stuff. What this USP is, it's the unique aspects of yourself that sets you apart from every employee and every job seeker in the market. And this is the biggest mistake that people make. They actually have no USP. They have no selling proposition because they look all over the place. No one wants to hire someone that doesn't stand for something. No one wants to hire someone that doesn't know what they want to do. You have to know exactly what you want to do, and you have to have a USP, because if you don't have a USP, you're going to get beat by people that do. Every successful partner that has a big book of business knows they have something that they stand for. Every successful partner, every successful business has something like this. And this is what you need to have too. And this is, by the way, what you're probably doing wrong. So if you understand what I'm talking about today, you can do it right. Your entire legal career can be built on this. You can develop a huge book of business. You can become anything you want to be if you can understand this. And the key word of USP, by the way, is unique. So your USP is what differentiates you from anybody you're competing with. It makes you a must-have hire an attorney in the job market. It does the same thing if you're trying to get clients. So you should be able to explain in a single phrase why someone should hire you and want to work with you and not someone else. That's all they need to know. Or why they shouldn't hire you at all. They should be able to explain. You should be able to have something that you stand for that will actually drive away certain employers, but drive certain employers to you. You need that. This is the most important thing you need to have. It's the thing you should think about before even putting together your resume. It's something you need to understand. people all the time think, hey, isn't an employer going to appreciate that I got all these different types of experiences, and therefore I can help them with this? Isn't someone that I'm trying to get business going to appreciate that I've done trademark law and commercial litigation and real estate? Isn't that going to make them very enthusiastic about me and think that I'm just a great person or a great potential employee? No. So your USP is what you offer. It's what you stick out, where you stick out to, and then what's memorable about your candidacy. It's very important. Just what's interesting too, this real estate agent that became very effective. People always try to be real estate agents. In Malibu, by the way, there's more real estate agents than there are homes sold each year. Everybody wants to be part of this club. And this particular real estate agent does what I'm going to talk to you about, and I'll tell you how he does it later. But this is extremely important. And the possibilities for this, there are unlimited. Like, you can frame any business, any candidacy, anything you do, you can focus around your USP. And it's going to give legal employers something, it's going to tell them something different about you. And you need to be careful, and you need to be able to fulfill whatever it is that you're promising in USP. But you definitely need, every candidate, every attorney needs a USP. Every attorney that has a lot of business has a USP. Every attorney that continually succeeds working in large law firms or even smaller law firms has a USP. Every law firm that generally has something that's a USP. So let me first describe something that characterizes most people looking for jobs. And when I say most people, it's pretty much definitely the majority. When I ask attorneys I'm interviewing why I should hire them and not someone else, they don't have a very good response. Most people don't. They don't have something that's different about them that makes someone want to hire them. They don't have anything particular they stand for. Sometimes people go to great law schools and they're like, oh yeah, my USP is I graduated from this law school. And most people that get into places like Harvard as undergraduates often have very strong USPs. They stand for something. This is what a lot of college counselors will teach people. They'll say, oh, you need to be interested in something. I remember when I was interested in going to Harvard when I was a high school student, my guidance counselor said, you have to stand for something, to have something special. He said the person in the class year that just graduated was very interested in bugs and was an avid bug collector and didn't have the best grades, but they got in because they stood for something. He said that another person that got in was someone that wrote plays. And that's all they did. And they were very interested in that. So colleges that select people that are with very competitive things want USPs. People that have USPs do much better than people that don't. And most people don't have one. Instead, they have this kind of what I call a rudderless, nondescript candidacy that depends on the momentum of the market. So if you want to get a position in a good firm during a good economy, sure, their firms need bodies and they will hire you because they need people. They're not as interested in a USP other than you tend to practice in one practice area, and they will hire you because they need people with your background and the prestige of your qualifications. The legal market is doing well and there are lots of positions, they'll get hired. But when you get out of law school, you have a lot more to compete with other than your grades and where you go to law school. That's no longer important. What's important is if you pick something and you stick to it and you know what you want. When the market slows down and these attorneys need another job, they'll often have to wait for the market to pick up again. I was on a call yesterday with this person that graduated from Harvard Law School and was at give me one second here. Yeah, it was at the top of their class. And then that person decided that they really wanted to do patent law and took the patent bar. And then they decided that because they didn't get any patent law jobs when they were in law school, they would do corporate law. And then they didn't like corporate law, so they quit their job or the market slowed down. And then they went and started a business. And then they decided they would start applying to firms and with patent bar in their resume. And there's just no focus. You can go to any law school you want. And if you're not focused, and this person said they've been applying to jobs and they applied to every AmLaw 100 law firm and hadn't got a single interview. This is what happens. It doesn't matter where you went to law school. It doesn't matter the strength of your background. If you don't have this, you're going to get eaten alive in the long run, regardless. And there's nothing that benefits a law firm, if there's nothing unique about you, that if you don't want to, you're not always trying to work in a law firm, that if there's no focus to you, there's not going to, if you don't know what you want to do, who wants to hire someone that doesn't know what they want to do? One of the most difficult people to place and for them to get a job is an attorney that decides after 1 or 2 years of practice that they want to do another practice area. Does that make any sense? The person, maybe they know what they want to do, but their resume doesn't position them to do something different. So that becomes difficult. Now, I'm not saying you can't switch practice areas, but it's very difficult. I was working with someone once that was one of the number one student in their class at a top 12 law school, and decided that they wanted to go from doing litigation to corporate law. And before I talked to them, they'd been sending out resumes to every single large law firm that they could find in the United States and got no interviews. Why do you think that is? It's because they don't know what they want to do. Now, that's not to say that I actually got the person interviews because I knew people to talk to, but at the same time, like, this is not, you have to look like you're unique. You have to be able to promise something that instead of just saying people should hire me, people shouldn't hire you. People are not going to hire you unless you know what you want to do, because if you don't know what you want to do, you're probably not going to stick working with them. You have to know exactly what you want to do. It's no surprise that most careers are just average and not exceptional. Most people never go as far as they could in their legal career because they never decide what they wanted. They never commit to anything. Most people only accomplish a very small share of what they could accomplish in their job searches without identifying this. They just don't. Their careers flounder, and they basically, they're out of luck, and that happens. Okay, so just a few more points. That you're really, unless you do this, you're really not going to accomplish anywhere near what you could in your career. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get business. You're not going to have satisfaction in your career. You're not going to get as many jobs as you possibly could. You're just going to go along with the tides and waves of the market and make less money than you should and have less success than you should, because you'll be one of the only people that doesn't. You'll be like most people that don't understand this. I've actually seen, just so you understand, I've spoken to 2 or 3 attorneys that have told me that when I taught this to them, it totally changed the direction of their career, and they became very successful partners in law firms. And in one case, someone that in the Midwest that got a huge book of business in more than $20 million. It was in Chicago that was a very good book of business. So this is very important stuff that I'm talking about today. Very important. And if you were hiring someone, why would you want to hire someone who was just average with no benefit, that didn't know what they wanted to do? Would you want to hire a doctor that did 15 different things and didn't know what they wanted to do? Would you want to hire a doctor that worked in a hospital, then had their own clinic, then decided to take some time off? And no, you have to understand how you focus and how you do things and be the absolute best you can be. Most careers, as I said, are merely average and not exceptional because people do not understand this. And almost all people, almost all attorneys are accomplishing only a small share of what they could in their careers because they don't do this. And you just have to understand this. You have to understand the point of view of an employer, the point of view of clients and everybody. And so I'm going to tell you a couple stories right now, unrelated to practicing law, but related to how this is done. And the first one is someone that was a Hollywood assistant with a unique selling proposition. So some time ago, several years ago, I don't know when, it was probably over 10 years ago, I hired an assistant whose former job had been to be an assistant of uneducated, meaning not very smart and financially sophisticated movie and rock stars. That's just the role she found herself in. And others who were on tight budgets and needed to keep their secrets in out of limelight, meaning they were getting a certain amount of money or living off that, and they had to be very careful about what they spent. And when I reviewed her resume, I think she'd been getting these jobs through an agency or something, but I saw a lot of very successful people there that she had worked for during her career. And she'd never actually been hired by these people. She'd been hired by their business managers and other people to work for them. And the type of job that business managers do for stars and others is, especially when clients get late in their careers, is they make sure that they don't run out of money. And then they try to make sure that they don't do things that are going to get them portrayed in the wrong way in the press and so forth. This is what they look for in her when they hired her. This is something that she developed and did throughout her career. And this is just what people wanted her to be. And had her job to be an assistant. More than this, and her job was obviously to babysit people and make sure that they didn't spend money or get into trouble. And in addition to this, she was an assistant, but her real skill was running people's lives and keeping their costs down. Because you can imagine that once you retire from a position like that as a rock star, or you have a limited amount of income to live on many times, especially if you spend it a lot earlier in your career. Along in her resume, when I reviewed it, and I wasn't an expert in reviewing resumes for assistants and stuff at that time, but her resume said something along the lines of, this was it really, effective in controlling confidential client spending and keeping them out of the media. That was pretty much, and keeping them out of the media in negative light. That was her resume. That's all it said. And I thought it was very strange. She was very personable and interviewed very well. And so well that I've hired her. I was interviewing lots of people and I hired her right in the interview. It wasn't like, I'm going to get back to you or anything. I just hired her. And then once she started work, what she did is she started shaping up everyone around her. She demanded that people not gossip and recommended in the harshest possible manner that I fired different people working for me that were gossiping. She literally would put herself into situations where she would hear gossip intentionally and then find out who was working for me that might have been gossiping, meaning gossiping about me or whatever, just gossiping. And so then she would look around the office and determine that everyone who came in to water the plants, the cleaning one, should be fired and replaced with employees doing this work instead of paying others to do it. And then when I would travel, instead of renting me like a decent car, she would get me these little Asian cars that I could hardly fit into. And then I would be checking into very cheap hotels, which was embarrassing because at some of these conferences I was speaking and other conferences, I might have been like 10 miles outside of a city where there was a big hotel and she was just trying to save money. And at that point in my career, I wasn't really that worried about saving money. And then when I protested, she would talk to me like a child. She'd say, it costs an additional, I'd say it only costs an additional $3 a day for a regular car. And then she'd say, what did I tell you about behaving? And she was very good at this type of thing, meaning saving money and watching expenses and then preventing gossip. And if I'd been a spendthrift, out of work actor on a fixed income, this would have been exactly what I needed. This is having those two characteristics are perfect for someone that's an out of work spendthrift actor that could get themselves in trouble. And obviously, if I was that position, people certainly wouldn't have gossiped about me to the press. I would have got rid of those people and I wouldn't have run out of money. So think about people like Britney Spears getting in trouble because of the things they're doing without supervision and agents and things around them. An assistant that does this kind of stuff, I think she had to get kicked. Anyway, she had a conservator before, but this is what people were doing. And her USP was very simple. I will make this person save money and I will keep this person out of the press. That was it. This is all she stood for, is that. So for that type of job, working for celebrities and things, that's exactly what the people that were hiring her needed. So sure enough, those were the type of jobs she got. And she literally had a business manager at some point, I don't know, business managers that made sure that she did nothing but that. She did it instinctively. And this is probably why she would actually never be unemployed in Los Angeles for a few days, if ever, because there are very few people that are assistants and things that stand for one thing, but like that, in that case, two things that some people need. Very important if you stand for something. And this is very strange. I've hardly ever seen someone in a position like that stands for something like that. It's very focused. It attracts a certain type of person. It makes a certain type of, it makes her unique. It makes, if you think about who she could work for. There's probably hundreds of former actors and things in Los Angeles that have business managers that could use something like that. But there's very few people that would ever stand for something like that. So this is an incredible USP. It's perfectly made for the Los Angeles market. It's perfectly made for a certain type of person. It's actually something that's needed. And it's something that probably hardly anybody stands for on their resume. And if that was the job that was needed, she is absolutely perfect. And it's the absolute perfect USP. It made her very much in demand and able to get any type of jobs that she wanted with that particular characteristic. So just imagine yourself, you're managing a former movie star, and your goal is to make sure that person doesn't get into trouble and do something stupid, and also make sure they don't spend too much money and run out of money. If that's your goal, this would be the absolute only person I would hire out of potentially hundreds, if not thousands of people that would want to work for that person because they're well known or whatever, or just applying for jobs. That would be who you would hire. And because the person stands for something, they follow through on it, and that's pretty much what they need. And I don't think this woman will ever have a hard time finding a job, no matter what the economy is like, as long as she stands for something. This is the value of this. And you can like how this works in terms of making sure you have a certain image for a potential employer. Someone's going to remember that. They will say, I like her because she will keep so-and-so out of trouble. I like her because we really need someone that's going to control and watch their spending. So it's ludicrous not to be able to have something like this. If you don't do this, your whole candidacy is going to change. You're not going to be as needed. You're not going to have people looking out for you, and you're not going to have people able to say something special about you that's unique. And again, I'm going to tell you what this real estate agent does in a few minutes, but here's a story of a very, very detail-oriented person. So when I was growing up, there was a guy down the street from me that was incredibly wild, meaning he got in a lot of trouble. He was once suspended in elementary school for picking up a desk. Remember those desks that you used to sit in that had the tops that opened up and you could put your stuff in there, and they were big and heavy? He picked one of those up once and threw it towards the front of the class at a teacher. And as he progressed through high school and then college, he continued to get more and more wild. One time he came over to my friend's house and he'd used so many drugs that he sat in a chair for what I understand was 36 hours staring at the wall. And I don't know what drugs would make you do that, but this is what happened. He was a wild guy, and he still is. He's still a pretty wild guy, at least on the last I heard. But despite all this wildness, he's actually very uptight. His mind kind of works when he's not on drugs like a vice grip. He's very detail-oriented. And when you're around him and he's not spaced out on drugs, it makes you uncomfortable. He's that way. He sees every detail and everything. And these details make him very agitated if everything is out of place. It's like an OCD thing too. Sometimes I've seen him start sweating if anything seems off too much. His face turns red. He's very wound up, and he's always been that way. And he almost flunked out of college because he was using drugs, and you can imagine. But he still ended up incredibly getting lots of good jobs, And employers would meet him, and they would realize that nothing is probably going to slip by him. Like he's constantly going to be on top of, and he's actually never been unemployed. His resume says something very simple. It says that it talks about his work experience and things, and says he's unbelievably detail-oriented, and absolutely true. That's the message you get when you talk to him and when you see him, and you pick it up, and it's on his resume. And his resume, when you read it, you can see how detail-oriented it is. It's like in these fonts that are, it looks detail-oriented. The font, you just get the sense when you look at it, this guy's like all over details. And I don't know how to explain it, but if somebody's mind is really wound up tight, like the way they write things, the way that things present themselves, the way things are phrased, you can just pick it up. And this is what this guy is. And he makes an incredible amount of money. Like when I say money, a lot of money, I think by the time he was 24 or 5, he was making probably what the equivalent now today would be $300,000 or $400,000 a year and getting stock options and all sorts. He lives in a very expensive house right now, but he's in something like quality control. I don't know what it is, but when this guy does work, you pick it up. And by the time he was 30, he was a multimillionaire. He works in a lab coat on these very expensive production lines and just something like make computer chips. I'm not even sure what it was, but he's a star. He's just very good at this one thing, meaning he sees every single detail. These details he picks up. He sees things that other people don't see. And his entire identity is based around being able to be detail-oriented, look at a problem, or look at something that's currently going on. And then once he does that, he's able to find things that other people don't see. He has a reputation for that. Everybody knows it. People talk about him like that. It's who he is. And having that identity is massively important to his success. And everyone understands this around him. This is what people say when they talk about him. They say, wow, this guy is very detail-oriented. It's what he does. And he does it very well. And everyone that comes in contact knows this. Other people talk about him that way. He talks about it on his resume. That's it. So the point is, you have one thing. If you focus on one gap or one niche or one segment of the market that the market needs, then you are going to do very well. You need one thing that you do. You need one type of client that you should be appealing to if you're trying to get business. You need one thing. And every partner that gets a lot of business, not everyone, but the majority of them stand for one thing. They say, I help mid-sized companies in the pharmaceutical industry raise money through bonds. I help mid-sized companies in the construction industry raise money for this, or I help mergers with this type of company. I was sitting on a plane not too long ago with a partner from Latham and Watkins, and in an office where it's very difficult to make partner, and he's an equity partner, and he does one type of transaction with pharmaceutical companies attempting to buy, smaller pharmaceutical companies in a related industry. And this is what people do. Like people that become very successful at anything, people that get the most jobs, people that make the most money, people that have the most satisfying careers, they stand for one thing. They have something that stands out. They don't say, hey, I'm an assistant, I work for big stars. They don't say, hey, I majored in production engineering or something at a fourth-rate college, and this is who I am. This is my resume. They don't say, hey, look at this. I went to Stanford Law School. Who do you think? Isn't that great? No, they have something that makes them different, and something related to their job that makes them different. This is incredibly important stuff. Wow. You need to really think about this and what I'm saying. So you need to focus your unique proposition on something, a gap, a niche, or some sort of market need. And you need to make sure you do that on something that the market needs. And the market needs guys and girls who are detail and assistants, control spending and public perception of people in the entertainment industry. Those are USPs. You need to come up with something and have something that sets you apart in the market, something that's unique. And these uniquenesses, by the way, they're not related to social issues or your political persuasion or the fact that you have to have something that's unique and something about you that's unique. This is what people do. And before you incorporate this into your resume or interviews and your work style, you need to figure out what you want to be. And then you need to refine it and focus it as clearly and directly as you can. Now, think about even this business, this legal recruiting business. All I do are place people in law firms. It's all I've ever done. I only do permanent placements. I don't place contract attorneys. I don't place people in-house. I just do one thing. It's all I've ever done. And I keep doing it and I keep learning more and more about it. And that's my USP. It's pretty simple. It's not very complicated, but believe it or not, in this particular industry, but I'm not trying to be all things to all people, and most people are. So you need to figure out what you want to be, and then you need to focus it as clear as you can. And you should be able to articulate what about you makes you special in less than a paragraph. You have to have something. You have to have something that makes you very unique. So it's interesting, this first law firm I worked at, Quinn Emanuel, Urquhart, Oliver, and then it became Hedges. But Quinn Emanuel. So Quinn was Quinn. He's visionary and had ideas about how to develop business and grow a firm. That was, and he also practiced law, but that was what he did. Then you had Urquhart, Bill Urquhart. His job was nothing but generating business and also getting candidates, finding candidates for the firm. So one guy's the visionary, Quinn. The other guy, Urquhart, is a person that helps perception of the firm in terms of bringing in business. And then the other one was recruiting candidates to come work there by the same thing. So Quinn and Urquhart. Oliver, that's a whole different story. And I'm not going to get too far into that, but he had some very big clients like General Motors and some other stuff. But then you had Quinn Emanuel, Urquhart, Oliver, whose whole job was basically was to improve the writing and the way the briefs and things were written at the firm and to coach people and to work. So you can see every one of those people at a firm that grew to from 4 or 5 people to doing over $1 billion in revenue and having hundreds, if not over 1,000 attorneys. All the people that founded it, each one had a USP. Every single one of them, they stood for one thing. Think about this. That builds a most successful litigation firm in the world. Just individuals having USPs. It's that powerful. And you should be able to do this in one paragraph. You need to stand for something. You need to have something that's going to get you a job and define your career. And you better be able to have one, because if you don't have one, you're toast. You're not toast. You'll just be towing the line with everyone else and whatever. That's okay if that's what you want. But if you think through who you are and you do this, you'll have something very, very powerful. You cannot state a USP. The people that work for you and interviewing you won't be able to necessarily define it either. So clearly conveying this will make your success in the job market close to inevitable if it's strong enough. Again, you will succeed because you will have something that no one else has. No one else is smart enough to put this together. Most attorneys aren't smart enough to, and when I say smart, I don't mean smart in terms of being smart, having an IQ. I just mean not thinking through these marketing concepts, not thinking through what you need to do to look stronger. People just don't think about this. And you need a USP before you do anything. You need one. You should have one as a freaking law student. Then when you get out, you better have one. You need to focus on something, and you need to have something about you that makes you unique. It's what will get you a job. It's what's going to define your career. It's what's going to get you clients. And if you can't state one and you don't have one, then you're just going to be able to toe the line with everyone else. And if there's a need for someone like you and you're lucky and maybe you look the best on paper, you'll get a job, sure. But conveying this is going to make your success in the job market literally close to inevitable if it's strong enough. But you need one of these before you do anything. Your resume needs to have one. Your interviewing needs to have one. Everything needs to focus around this. And creating a meaningful USP is going to take all the details of your experience and your education and who you are, and you'll be able to define it in a few sentences. These sentences are salesmanship. People aren't going to remember if you say, hey, I got some great experience working for the government. I went to this law firm and I got some good trial experience. And then I got to work on even some corporate matters. Isn't that great? And oh, by the way, I play tennis on Tuesdays. And I also married, but I've got 2 kids. And one of my kids these are not things that are going to move the ball for you. You need to have something that people can remember. And it doesn't really you don't even need to care about it. It doesn't even have to sound that great. It just needs to help you stand out and create positive impression in the employer's mind. And then the biggest test is if you've done a really good job of this, or is it something that could be adopted by another job seeker? Is it? You have to think about that. And here's some examples, by the way, of meaningless USPs. Someone will say, oh, I'm a well-educated teacher. Someone will say, oh, I'm hardworking. Another person may say, hey, I'm a team leader, a team player. This is what a law firm may say. Hey, we're composed of team players. When you read job descriptions, what law firms say about themselves is often very funny because it doesn't really stand for anything. These type of USPs don't do anything to separate you from another person in the job market. Calling yourself hardworking or But these things are not going to help you stand out. Lots of people are well educated and professional. Almost 600 people come out of Harvard Law School every year. So you go to Harvard Law School, great, but there's a lot of competition. You do whatever. Lots of people are hardworking. Lots of people are team players. And none of these things are really unusual. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are expected. So if an employer puts out an advertisement for any job, they're going to have applications for people that claim they have these unique qualifications, that they're hardworking or a team player. And this is what people say in their cover letters. And honestly, none of this is unique. Think about it. None of these type of qualifications are unique. There's nothing unique about them. None of them are really going to make you stick out in the employer's minds when they review your resume and interview and consider hiring you. None of them are. If you want to do this, you want to be like everyone else, I don't know why you would want to do that. I don't think it's going to help you. So how do you succeed? You have to stand out with truly unique qualifications. So being well-educated, what does that mean? Hardworking, what does that mean? Are you a team player? What does that mean? You need to go deeper and deeper into this stuff and understand, is there a way to better define these things? You need to push harder to find something that really makes you stand out. You could say something like, if you were a teacher, you could say, students in my class get so enthusiastic about learning, they often come to me for, extra reading to help learn assignments more. So this person's inspiring people so much that they're actually going and reading about this material on their own, outside of being normal, outside of what normal people do. Meaning this person must really be giving people a lot of curiosity and doing something unusual. People just love the material. Someone could say something like Oxford educated teacher, former high school Victorian teacher who speaks Latin and 4 languages, incredibly enthusiastic about learning. You could say something like that. Maybe instead of well-educated, you could say something like, this is for another person. You could, instead of hardworking, you could say, my supervisor always tell me not to work so hard. I've known at every employer that I've ever worked at is the last person out of the day. I'm the guy supervisors tell to take a vacation. This makes you look hardworking and it makes you look very good. It's interesting. I was in New York, a month ago, and I was with someone that was meeting with a doctor that owned this huge clinic that specialized in, doesn't matter, I guess it's nowhere, but they specialized in one thing, and they probably had 30 or 40 people working there. The person that founded the clinic was someone that went to Cambridge in England and managed and specialized and got a PhD in one thing. Actually, I'll say what it was. No, I'm not going to, but a PhD in one thing, and had this great specialty clinic that did just one thing, nothing but this one thing, and all these people working there. But I remember they said something to me that it was very interesting. I was talking to a nurse who was taking blood and another person that was just, behind the science desk. And every one of them said the same thing about this person. They said, he's the first one in, the last one out every night. And I thought it was very interesting because this giant clinic, all these people working there, one person, the first one in, the last one out. You get people that, and so instead of just saying this person was this and that, it just stood for one thing, and it was pretty cool. And so instead of saying I'm a team player, you could say, am I too friendly and liked by other people at work? You could say, when my employers hired me, my morale rises because I'm always the person who organizes softball leagues, basketball teams, and so forth for the employers. Pizza parties at my house are a regular occurrence. So just think about how this stuff sounds. You don't say I'm a team player. You say something that says he's just the kind of person where everything around him, people like him, they feel good about him or her, they organize all this. And then you can immediately picture what type of person that is. It doesn't say team player. It says something that's completely unique that actually gives a message like, yeah, we could use someone around here that gets people out of the office and doing fun things. We could do somebody around here that raises morale. We need someone like Eric Emanuel Quinn, who does nothing but read and spends all their time proofreading and making suggestions to briefs. These kind of things show you, in a way, how people want them to think about. Someone that's a team player You think about them as organizing all these events and doing all these things and raising morale. Each of them is memorable. It makes the person stand out. People look at someone like that and they don't say, hey, this person's a team player, or hey, they're hardworking. They look at this and you tell them in a way that is absolutely positively going to sell the person on them as being unique. It's vivid language, it's unique, and it helps people get a sense and understand about what's being talked about and referred to. So here's some powerful USPs that can transform you into an irresistible candidate. My greatest and most favorite skill is doing what I do, which is legal recruiter. And I've written hundreds of profiles or thousands of profiles out there to help attorneys get positions on various law firms. And when you look at most attorneys, a lot of them are pretty much identical to others out there in the market. The different attorneys, certain types of attorneys may all go to good law schools or work hard or be ambitious. And so for me, one of my successes and ability to get people placed has been to differentiate every attorney I work with from the rest. I don't know if I'm best at this or anyone. It doesn't matter, but actually it's a lot more than that. It's probably, anyway. But from doing this, I've made a lot of fees doing it. And honestly, there's nothing I do for candidates that I work with that's more important than helping them have an incredibly strong USP. Now, it's unfortunate that I can't do this with every candidate that comes in, but when I do it, it's very powerful. It's one reason I go to these marketing conferences, because I learn things like this, and the more deeply I do, it helps people get jobs. I've seen people's careers where I've been involved, their lives turning around after months or years of not getting positions and them going into interviews. 1 year, and it doesn't matter, but at my peak of doing this, when I was still working with people, I literally placed every single candidate I worked with when I was doing this for everyone that I worked with. And every attorney and every person that has a USP has something that can be used by employers. And sometimes it's the fact that the person's overcome obstacles. Other times it could be that they're an incredible writer, and you can talk about that. Other people could just be how passionate they are for the subject matter that they're doing, how much they do, how much they write, whatever, just something that's very passionate. Other times it's their character. You can define people in a way where you talk about them as having high character. So people think of them as someone with high character. Someone thinks about them as someone that's a good writer. Someone thinks about them, they're very passionate about one aspect of practicing law. And so this is very powerful stuff. And the point is that everyone out there has a particular USP. When you think of certain politicians, they may have that. When you think of different types of businesses, they have that. And the idea is you're different from other people. And there has to be something different about your candidacy and experience than everyone else out there. There has to be something. You have to look like something different. And you need to say so and be as upfront as possible about this. You need to be able to stand for something. You need to have something about you that is different from other people that people remember. It could be how detail-oriented you are. It could be that you're credible in some aspect of a practice area and passionate about it. It could be something like that. I remember a lot of times I talk to these attorneys that are very successful. And what is this person doing that's unusual? I was talking to one attorney. I've talked to a couple of attorneys actually in the past, and one of them is just like very interested in this one aspect of law. And since they've been a law student, they've been clipping articles and reading things and writing papers about this one aspect of the law. Brilliant. So this is all the person does, is concentrate on. If you were looking for an attorney to represent you and you were accompanying that one aspect of the law, that person could talk all up and down about this. It's something that doctors do. I was talking to a doctor not too long ago that used to be a friend of mine, specializes in one rare type of operation and goes all over the world doing it. I think he charges $250,000 for this one procedure that takes 4 or 5 hours. So this is something that no one else in the world does. So when people need this, he's the one that's called. So you need to have a story that lets people understand what this USP is. The idea would be, I learned the importance of hard work because I grew up on a farm and got up at 7:30 in the morning to milk cows from the time I was 7, went to college early, never missed a day. If you're looking for someone who works hard and is dedicated, you're never going to find. So getting something like this or having that as a story or something when you're talking to people or some way that this kind of stuff is communicated, that's persuasive. And what makes that person different than someone that's an upper middle class person that thinks they're highly of themselves and went to a great law school, or someone with this types of story that grew up on a farm, got up at 4:30 in the morning and went to college, is grateful for this opportunity and is going to keep working hard because this is a life they want. This is the kind of stuff that you encounter attorneys that have been successful. And a lot of times they have some backstory like that. Would you interview someone that was a former farmer and lived this way? Would you want to interview them and hire them? Would you want to interview someone that just wants to sit around and talk about their federal clerkship and the fact that they were on law review or whatever? Come on, you think about this. And this is the power of this. So you have to look like the right choice among all the other legal employers that are out there. And if you really want to get a job, you have to understand something that makes you unique, something that people are going to remember you by, not 15 different things, not like I'm hardworking, a team player, and I love corporate law. It has to be something that people are going to remember you by, where they can say one thing. And you're going to be a standout attorney if you can do that. And your resume is going to stick out to law firms, and it's going to make you memorable. And employers are going to be buying you as a concept and not just as an employee. If you think of a Volvo car, the first thing that comes to mind is safe. If you think of a Porsche or a Mercedes, it's well engineered. Like think about this. But Mercedes, well engineered. Volvo, safe. Like they just grab onto one thing. They're Tesla, electric. You have like companies that their entire existence, billions of dollars in revenue, are just based on saying one thing. One thing. It's not, a Volvo's fast and it's really nice inside, and it's got such a great ride, and wow, it's got really good vision because of the way this is what people do. I once bought, I still have it, a 1987 BMW M6, which is all I would read about this car would be, it's got a great panorama view or something. Like the windshield's big. So that's how people talk about cars. They talk about them that way. Auto companies, they talk about them that way. Apple, easy to use and intuitive. One thing. So think about that. You have to have one thing or something that stands out. And this is incredibly important. It's what companies do that are successful. It's what people do that are successful. If you have one thing that sticks out or one way that people can buy into you, you're going to succeed. Do you think these companies would have become anywhere near as successful as they have? And the companies that flounder, by the way, don't really stand for very much. They try to be all things to all people. People can't really figure it out. People can't say things about them that are unusual. That's how it is. So when you interview with a law firm, you need to have something about that. And you need to think about your own examples. When you're in a product or service, do you favor businesses that strongly present a USP and have something to say? Are you buying Apple phones and computers because they're hard to use and everything else? And you just can't appeal to everyone out there. In fact, certain types of USPs are only going to appeal to certain law firms and not others. I will never forget when I had this one candidate. He wanted to work in San Francisco, and he was this diehard Republican, and he's Federal Society and all this stuff. So he had this all over his resume, and he would apply to all these firms, and it's very liberal there, so no one was interested in him, even though he went to Northwestern Law School and was a very good student, but they didn't like him. But there was one firm in San Francisco that was composed of all of these Republicans. And when they saw his resume, they said, we have got to have this person. They did everything they could to get him to hire and work there because he stood for one thing, and that's what they stood for. Here we are, these Republicans in the middle of San Francisco. So you have to have a USP. You have to differentiate yourself in the market. Now, I'm not saying that was the best USP for him, but you have to have something. If you do this, you're never going to have a hard time finding a job. It's just one of the most important things. I will give examples more when we take Q&A in a minute, but you have to have this, and you must define your USP before ever creating your resume, and you need to focus this on a single niche. Now, I'll tell you the quick story of the real estate agent that enables him to sell $1 billion in things a year that got him there. He would take any house. It didn't matter what the house was, and he would come up with one thing about it. Oh, it's got the best backyard I've ever seen. Oh, it's got such a beautiful roof. And he would do that, and that's how he got successful. He created a USP for every single house that he sold. So I'm going to take a quick question. Come back in a minute. And when I do, we'll take as many questions as you got about this. Yeah. So just one thing I wanted to say, this whole concept of, let me pull up real quickly. Sorry. So yeah, this whole concept of a USP is honestly, I think it is one of the most important things that you'll ever understand with your career. And if you are able to understand it, it will completely change the direction of everything you do. And you have to, and I guess people may have a question like, how do I frame my USP? How do I come up with a USP? How do I stand for something? And generally, I think for the USP is you have to think about what do you do? Think about what do you do? What do you do? And what would you do if you could do what you wanted? So what do you want? What do you want to do? What is it like if anybody asked you, what are you most interested in? What do you think would make you, what, if you could do anything in a law firm, what would it be? I remember there was one attorney, and sad, but he was this very hard biller in the law firm, meaning billing 3,000 hours a year, and he died from all the stress, drinking, very, very young, early 40s, but became a partner at a law firm in 3 years or something. It's just unprecedented. But he died actually never doing what he wanted to do. He got on this path where his value was billing all these hours for the firm, and he was making them so much money billing all these hours that the firm basically wanted to do that. But he had something he really wanted to do. He was very good at dealing with talking to clients. He was very good at bonding with clients and generating business. He was very good at coming up with ideas for how to generate business and how to bond with clients. And that's what he always wanted to do. And the law firm never let him do that. They just insisted that he continue doing what he wanted this. And even though that was his skill, he never got to do that. And so his USP to the firm was just billing hours. So that's not a good USP. That he probably died from it. But the people that are the most successful in practicing law, they have a USP, like some aspect of a practice area, some characteristic of their personality. I remember, I'll just tell you one of the USPs that I was able to get early in my career. I'd worked for this judge that was incredibly detail-oriented, meaning you'd turn in a 30-page memo and he would find a typo on page 16 where you misspelled a word or whatever and be visibly agitated by it. So I learned very early in my career to be incredibly detail-oriented, to mark things up, to do that. And I learned how important that was a year working for this person where that's all I had to do. And I got into a law firm and I did the same thing. And people started giving me things to proofread, and partners would give me all sorts of writing assignments because they knew it would be done with a lot of detail and thought. First, you can develop a USP very early in your career doing a lot of things. And it could be, it usually is smart to base it on a practice area, a certain type of client, or in your practice area, some certain type of niche. And this is what people do that become successful. It's all they do. I remember one time, one of the most successful attorneys I ever met had worked for a large law firm in Detroit, and then when he was doing that, became very successful doing bond issues where a municipal bond is where a city puts out these notes and agrees to pay a certain percentage interest for this. And he became an expert in putting these together, and he would do it for working class towns and cities around Michigan, meaning places that were factories or being cars and building auto parts and I don't know, but doing it for a certain type size town in Michigan and driving around to all these, there's hundreds of them, Rust Belt cities doing this thing. And that's all he did. And he did it at a competitive price, and the law firms and clients loved him for it. So he didn't have to work with a law firm. He had this expertise. And I guess this is back in the 90s, but he was being driven around in a van where he's working, where it was work table and everything. So attorneys who become very successful often just have these USPs. They may do one aspect of the First Amendment law. They may, I don't know, but it's all this sort of thing. And then they commit to it. So if you have this, then you're going to be more attractive to potential clients. You're going to be more attractive to law firms. You're going to be more attractive to all sorts of people. Patent attorneys are interesting. Patent attorneys, pretty much, if they're specialized enough, they never have a difficult time getting a job. Sometimes they'll just be a specialist in one aspect of patent law. I had patent attorneys sometimes that might be an expert in lasers being fired at glass lenses or something like that specific. And then you'll be like, wow, I wonder if I've ever had any jobs for firms that needed someone that knew how to, the patent stuff involved in firing lasers at, concave glass, something literally that. And sure enough, I'll find like a couple firms in the US that have had openings for that. I'll send the person to that. They could be 65 years old. And within hours of that resume arriving, I'm getting calls from both those firms, like, we really need to talk to this person. So this is how it works. If you have something on your resume that's very specialized, or something that you do that's very specialized, something that's memorable, like, you're going to be hired, and people can build an entire firm, or you can build an entire identity and things around this. So it's incredibly important, but no one does it. Everyone just thinks, they don't think through this. You have to look at yourself, think about what you're interested in, think about what you would do if you had all the freedom in the world to do things, and then think about what you would be the best at. And I don't know how many different ways to say what I'm saying. I've probably overdone it, but this is like one of the most important things that you can possibly do in your career if you want to be successful. I'm going to take some questions now. I may talk more about USPs when I take questions. The questions, by the way, you should ask questions about pretty much anything you're interested in or want to know about your career. If you feel like I could help you develop the USP based on your background, that's great. All the questions are confidential. So anything that you ask, I won't show your name. I won't, if you're logged in, but yeah, they're all confidential. So you don't have to, you can ask anything. And a lot of times the questions that are you may think are the dumbest are actually really good questions. For example, every week, people generally that are new attorneys lose their jobs and they wonder what to do. These are questions that happen. Other times I have candidates, you may have lost your job for some reason related to bad behavior. You can ask questions about that too. Or you may not quite understand this concept of USP and how you can frame that early in your career. So any questions you have, you should ask. And I'm happy to answer as many questions as people have. And that is something that can help you. Okay, let me just see. And I hope everyone knows understanding this concept of USPs. The idea is, you just have to figure out something that makes you unique. You have to specialize in something. You have to get interested in something that makes you more likely to stick. Okay, so I'm a fresh attorney who's had some bad luck earlier in my career. I lost a position at a small firm after graduating, which had no work. I got lucky and managed to move up to a specialized national boutique. Right, congratulations. I was working extremely hard, getting a good reputation, very busy, and then a political mistake with a partner cost me my job. I also graduated from top law school, but I am now unemployed. What personality qualities can I focus to develop on my USP? Okay, so I want to be very clear with everyone on this call that the first thing is most attorneys lose their jobs. At some point, attorneys lose jobs in their career, usually multiple times, meaning you might lose one when you're just starting out. You might lose one 3 years later. You might lose one 10 years later. You might lose one 20 years. People just lose jobs. And usually when people are losing jobs, by the way, I want everyone to understand the big reason for that is often it's because the law firm's just not making money off you yet because they don't have enough business, or sometimes the law firms are small and they don't know how to manage people and people would just rather do the work themselves. And there's all sorts of reasons. But usually if there's enough business and money coming in, no one's going to complain about you. You're not going to lose your job. But if there is, then people may lose their jobs. And then this particular person saying a political mistake with a partner costing their job. Yeah, these political mistakes are very common. The biggest thing I would tell you, people say they make political mistakes, is when early in your career, you're a soldier, so you do whatever, no complaints, do what you're asked. And then when you get older and you're a partner or whatever, do it. When you get older, then you become a general. And that means give orders, find fault with others, and all that sort of stuff. So everyone loses their job or in their career. Typically, the reason that they lose their job is because they want to do something. They start acting like a general or questioning generals and that sort of, which is set people up above them. And then generals, depending on their ego, do not like to be questioned. They don't like it. And they know that you don't know as much as they do. So if they have not strong egos, they will do something to get back at you. So this is just important for everyone to understand. If you are in any type of soldier role, meaning you're dependent on others for work, you have to act that way. And basically it's yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. You don't say that, but that's your attitude and you got their back. So how can someone focus stuff on a USP? I'll just give you an example of someone that I was talking to yesterday. So this person, and I think I brought this up earlier, this person had done two things. They'd been a corporate lawyer and they went to let's say top 3 law school, maybe top 5 law school. Very smart, great, whatever, HLS, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. So they are a corporate lawyer in a niche without a lot of, and then they lost their job almost a year ago and had not been able to find one, which obviously is not good. Their strategy of finding a job was basically to write all the other big law firms in the city they were trying to get a job from, saying, do you have any jobs for me to do this? And they weren't getting jobs. Now, the other thing that was interesting about this person is they went in college, they majored in a engineering science. I'm not going to say what it was, but engineering science discipline, and then also took the bar. So this seems complicated. So if the person went to a top 5 law school and was a corporate lawyer, I would say for 3 years, I don't know what it was, or 3 years in a niche without a lot of jobs, but enough jobs, and then they lost their job and hadn't been able to find one, it seems it's going to be difficult for this person to find another job because they're not getting jobs because they're only trying to work in the biggest firms, and they're not getting jobs because now the longer time goes by, it does look like they lost. Oh, and then the other thing is started a company with a friend and that went out of business. This is what they put on the resume, but it's not that true. So the point is that you look at this resume and you're thinking like, what does this person want to do? Do they want to be an entrepreneur? Why haven't they gotten a job? What's going on with the corporate lawyer? But then in college, you major in engineering science. They also took the patent bar. So that's actually very interesting. So what I told this person is you can continue applying for these corporate jobs, but if you have the stupid company on your resume, the law firm's going to think that you're never going to work there. And if you've applied to every single law firm and you haven't been able to get a job despite having these great qualifications, then you're having a hard time. Now, this is not normal for someone to be unable to get a job when this sort of happens. And when I see there weren't a lot of jobs, I think the person was interested in one East Coast market, and there might have been 7 or 8 jobs there so it wasn't a lot. But what I did is I took a look at this person and I said, hey, this person majored in this engineering science discipline. They took the patent bar. How do I frame all of this in a way that makes this person look like they have a USP? And so what I did is I said, you have to say that you didn't like practicing corporate law, that you always wanted to be a patent attorney, that you took this patent bar, even though you had this job paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in this big firm. And then you decided you wanted to take some time off and then now you want to get into patent law, and that's what you've always wanted to do. That's why you took the patent bar, because who else would take the patent bar while they're a corporate attorney and study for that? You must really like something. That's where your passion lies. And this is what you want to do. And you're willing to work at a small firm to get experience. And you have to say, I'm a science person. I like science. I want to do this. I'm interested in this. And so that puts things together and makes the person seem like there's something very special about them and unique, and they're following their passion and doing something. And that's their USP, at least to get a job. So something like that is very powerful. And you need to have something, if you lost the job, that shows an interest in something and a passion in it compared to other people. And so this is going to help you quite a bit if you can develop something. So this person wanted to be a patent lawyer so much that they left a $300,000 a year job and took the patent bar while they were there and felt they were getting too deep into it and really want to do this now. And look at all the initiative they did taking the patent bar. Look at that, the fact that this person went to a top 5 law school. They got almost all A's in this very difficult engineering sciences, where they could have gone on to PhD. So all these things you can do to frame your experience in a way that makes people memorable. It's memorable to think someone left them, $300,000 a year job because they wanted to be in a different practice here and felt like they were getting in too deep and really wanted to concentrate. And I've told that person, you can get jobs probably in small firms doing that, and then you can move to bigger firms. And that's what the person's going to do. So instead of being unhappy and saying I'm unemployed and all this stuff, now they have a way to get into firms and to get into a certain type of firm, do the kind of work that they really want to do and have a good story around it. And people will say, wow, they left this super big, powerful law firm because they're so interested in this one discipline. That's why they studied it in college. That's why they got such good grades, all that sort of thing. Okay, I hold an MBA, MS in finance, speak 3 languages. I brought it to the business. Brought in probably the business where I work. A 4th-year associate currently. I do specialize in the VC private M&A space. What is my USP? Can you help with that? Okay, so an MBA is good. So you have an MBA in finance. That's great. And you do VC and private M&A. Okay, so I think the MBA in finance and so forth is good. I know, that's a very good thing to have. I know a guy that was a partner at Goldman Sachs when they had their IPO and made a lot of money, and it was a similar type of thing. He went to Harvard Law School and also Harvard Business School, and before working at Goldman. It's just interesting. This is having an MBA and is a very good thing for corporate lawyers, and it's something that law firms. I actually place people every year that are attorneys that went in and got a MBA and want to come back. And it's funny because they tend to have the highest salaries of people graduating from the MBA programs when they go back to law firm, because they might have left from the 3rd or 4th year, and then they get their MBA and they go back as 4th or 5th year associates. And that's very funny. So if you're a corporate attorney, getting an MBA can often be a great thing. It can also help you understand businesses better. So you do VC and private M&A. So this is how you get a USP, and this is how you start defining yourself. You find of your specialty of the M&A you do, type of M&A or VC work, meaning a certain type of company and a certain type of deal. What does that mean? So that means that it could be a size company needing a certain type of transaction, something like that. So you figure out like what it is that you did that makes you very successful. So I was at a dinner, I don't know, but 6 weeks ago, and there was a partner there that has a $7 million guaranteed base firm. This is the kind of money you can make, by the way, if you're very successful. $7 million guaranteed base, and brings in $30+ million a year into his law firm. And what's his story? So his story is that he does or mid-cap companies in a certain general type of space. I'm not going to talk about what it is because I don't want to give this person away. And not only that, but does the work at half the cost of what most major firms would charge, and then gets a certain type of result. This is very simple. And this is what this person does. If you call them and you're a huge company, you want to do this, he'll refer you to someone else. If you're too small, he won't work with you. If you're not in the space, he won't work with you. So this is what he does. So what makes that such a beautiful thing? What makes it so beautiful is if you do something like this, know who to approach, you know how to do the same type of work, you know how to do the work, you have the connections in the industry to get business, you have the connections to get the work done, meaning accountants and other lawyers and service, whatever you need to do the work. You can train service partners, associates to do things a certain way. I'm just telling you how this works. And associates do things a certain way. You can be more efficient. I'm just telling you how people think about this. more efficient because you're doing the same transaction over and over again. And then, sorry about that, same transactions. You can, what else? Other businesses talk about you, similar businesses talk about you. Obviously, anyway, so that's the idea. So you do that, you do the work at half the cost of what others charge, you get a certain type of client, and then all these things just fall into place. And because of that, this person is able to generate incredible amounts of business. They stand for something, people know they do a certain type of transaction, you do it for this type of company, all this stuff falls into place once you have this, and it works. This is what the best attorneys do, is they're able to position themselves in a way that people think a certain thing about them when they're working with them. So this is how you need to think too. Whoever you are, you need to think about, how do I position myself? What is my story? What is my story? This person's story up here is, I always wanted to be a patent attorney. I got into the wrong practice area and I just was on this runaway train. I had to stop because if I didn't stop, I'd always do that. And I know I need to start from the bottom in patent law, but I'm going to do it and I'm determined to do it. And this is why I got my patent bar license when I was practicing corporate law. I'm very much interested in this. No one cares you speak 3 languages. Now, you might want to use that to do a certain type of transaction and use that. I've seen people that have connections with the French people, and they do all their work for the French. I know one woman that's an immigration attorney in Los Angeles is also French. And so she works. And so because she's French, she gets these referrals from the French embassy, and other French people talk about her, and she does all French people. This is just how it works. People that are very good have this, but that's how you have to be. If you think about how are you going to position yourself in M&A, you have to figure out how you look to people like you do a certain type of work, and that's all you do, and or you're interested in. And you have to figure out what that is. You could write articles, you could give talks about it, you could do all sorts of things. But once you develop that, it's going to make you very successful. And no one does this, by the way. Most people think, oh, I'm just an M&A, I just do this and I do that. But no, you want to position yourself as someone that's unusual and able to stand out as something. Okay, so this person's, I'm a very hard worker. Would it be an effective USP to say on my resume in interviews that I'm the first person in the office and the last person? No, I'd be careful about that. I think you can give that impression. But as an associate, the problem is if you say that as an associate, you're going to freak out other associates because they're going to view you as someone that's going to make them look bad. So no, I wouldn't put that on my resume. I think you would want people to say this about you, so you could build the whole identity about what a hard worker you are, and people would say this about you, and remember you for that. No, it's not something that you necessarily want to put on your resume. Okay, so this person says, I am a VC attorney and I'm trying to expand into capital markets. How do I do that? So if you're trying to make a switch like that, the smartest thing you can do is you could work at a firm that has a VC and capital markets work. And then you could start asking people in capital markets for work if they would give it to you, which they might, or if the firm would allow. That's one way to do it. But this is difficult with the largest firms because the largest firms have specialists. That would be very difficult. So if you wanted to do that, this is an interesting thing. This is for anyone on the call that is wondering, how do I get into another practice area, and how do I position myself for success in another practice area? So the idea is you have large markets, large firms, and then you have, mid-market. And this is a lot to this, mid-market, and then small market, small. Okay. And this is important for everyone here to understand. So in large markets and large firms, they're typically specialists, and moving between practice areas is difficult. So meaning what this person is saying is tough. So what this person here is saying about large market is they're an ECVC attorney. That's it. So that's it. Only this, not capital markets. So that's the problem the person is having. So how do you get around that? The only way to get around that is to either try to work in a firm where they're going to allow you to do some of that work, or to go to a different market. Now you may say, why wouldn't a law firm possibly allow me to work in this area if that's what I want to do? And why would my existing firm not do that? Now, sometimes your existing firm will allow you to do that, which is really the smartest way to do this. But most of the time, your firm's not going to allow you to do that. They're not going to want you to do that, because if you do that, it's just, there's no sense to it. Why would we hire someone for a position or train them to do a certain type of work only to have them do other work? Are we going to have to knock them back in class year? It's not unfair to our clients that we're putting someone without this type of training on their jobs and charging them as a fourth year when they really have the experience of a first year. Does it benefit? Could you find the job? Oh, people always ask this. They think, oh, yes, let me apply to law firms and say I want to switch practice areas for this opening. Wow, I see this capital markets opening. Hey, I'm a VC attorney. I'd love to switch to that practice area. Why would a firm hire you to be switch practice areas when they've got 100 applications for people that are already doing that practice area that want to don't want to switch practice areas? Just think about it logically. No one's going to do that. Would you? I mean, would you hire someone to do something like that? Would you hire if someone wanted to work in your house as a nanny, would you hire someone that had experience as a nanny? Or would you hire someone then a house painter and now decides they want to work with kids? Come on, just put yourself in the shoes of an employer. So how do you get around that? One of the ways to get around that is to go to a middle market or a smaller firm in a large market. So why do you do that? So middle markets, and the idea would be, is you're, instead of working in New York City or Chicago, you work in a smaller market, which might be Memphis or something. I don't know. But when you get into middle markets, what happens is most of the firms are not specialized in practice areas. So the idea would be the corporate attorney would do might do. I'm just sorry here. M&A, securities, general, corporate, and VC work. And why VC, et cetera. So why would that happen? The middle market might happen because there's just not enough work and there's not enough demand for specialists to keep specialists busy. So then you could go into a firm like this and work on securities. Then you could also, if you did enough work, you could get a reputation for being the securities expert in Memphis or whatever city this is. And then you could use that reputation to move back to a larger market, or you could just try to focus all your practice on that and get as much securities work as you could, and then figure out how to do a lot of securities work and get as much securities work as you possibly can in Memphis or whatever this, and then you could become a well-known securities. When people need securities work, they think of you. Just like if somebody needs bond work at a mid-sized city in Michigan, they'll think of this one person. So you have to develop a specialty like that. Now, you can also do this with smaller firms. You can try to do that in a smaller law firm, or you could find a branch office of a firm that sometimes may not have a lot of work in a major market. But that's how you do it. You try to go to smaller markets many times. And if you go to smaller markets, you can generally try to do things here. Let's see here. So when you started a recruiting firm, what was your USP? So it's very funny. When I started recruiting years ago, there were and they were talking about decades ago, most of the recruiting firms had websites, but it would just say, hey, we do a placement. We're great, like 1 or 2 pages. And what I started doing that was different than other recruiters, I focused on doing one type of placement, which was law firm placement. Back then was only attorneys from the best firms and the best backgrounds. So would have recruiters that went to top law schools and worked in top firms. But the big thing that we did is I started putting out all of these educational articles and things when other recruiting firms didn't have anything up. And even our own recruiters, the first time I put an article up about interviewing, 2 of the recruiters that worked for me walked into my office and closed the door. And they said, you can't be doing this. If you put articles up about how to interview, people are going to take that information and they're going to get jobs on their own, or other recruiters are going to read this and realize how to prep people. And that's how the market was so long ago. It was literally like there was no information. And so I started creating information, and that became something, I guess, that was a USP. And then later it became that we only did law firm placements, and then it became, we can place all sorts of attorneys in all sorts of law firms. And that it's just that it became much different. So USPs can evolve over time. It's not to say that they're always the same, but you do need something that sticks out. I think the one thing that I did also is think in terms of firms thought of me as someone that just gave a lot of information about candidates. And that was my biggest thing. So I'd write a lot of information. I used to write these long letters that would like 5 or 6 pages. I would fly to different cities and meet with candidates. But it's just, people do it different ways. And you can do it a lot of different ways, your own USP, but it can definitely evolve over time. And sometimes you may not know what your USP is initially, but like I said, the best way to develop a USP is often to think about what you're interested in. What would you want to be known for? What is it that you find interesting? And what could you see? What would you want people to talk about when they think about you? Okay. I'm a patent attorney. I practice patent, copyright, and trademark prosecution. Okay. With a unique specialty where I am a certified anti-money laundering specialist and write policy and procedures for broker dealers and other financial institutions. Okay. 2 completely different areas. What is the best way to synergize 2 different areas of law? Okay. I like this question. So what I would say here, there's a couple of different ways that you need to frame this. So if you patent, first of all, doing patent, copyright, and trademark prosecution is not specialized. That's a problem. Trademark is a whole different branch of law. Patent and copyright or patent is a whole different branch of law. You should have some specialties within patent. I'll just show you an example here. If you go into what does BCG do with different specialties is you have, wow, look at this. You go into patent law. Let me see your intellectual property. And I do this all day long when I'm looking at candidates. So you have IP litigation, you have patent. So you have hard sciences patent. And then you have all these, you have electrical engineering, computer science, mechanical, physics, software. So this is what patent attorneys do. And you become a patent attorney known for your experience in physics or electrical engineering. This is just how it works. So you have to be much more focused if you're going to do something like that. And you should be focused on one aspect, like one aspect of patent law. That's it. Or one aspect of trademark law. So that's where you need to work. So now you say, I'm a certified money laundering specialist and write policy and procedures for broker dealers and other financial institutions. That's awesome. So this is what you should focus on. You should be known. This is what I would do. This is what you should focus on. If you focus on this patent aspect and just general patent, copyright, and trademark, that's meaningless. You're not even focused on patent law. You're not even focused on trademark law. So it puts you in a tough position where no one is really going to be that interested in you. I wouldn't be. Think about that. Why would someone that needs a patent done want to have someone that's doing patent and trademark? They'd want someone that does a certain type of patent. Because when you're specialized, that means you're able to look at stuff more directly, make conclusions more directly. Meaning if you do one type of patent, you've done nothing but software patents for 20 years, you're going to have a lot of insight into that software patents, especially if it's one type of software patent. I'm a certified anti-money laundering specialist and write policy and procedures. So this is great. I don't even know what this, but if you were able to become a certain type of money laundering specialist, this is great. This is something you could build your entire career and future on, being one type of thing and knowing everything there is about it. And then when people were looking for you or looking for someone to do that, you would keep being mentioned over and over again. This is how referrals happen when attorneys go from attorney to attorney. They don't say, oh, this person's a patent and trademark and they talk about one thing. So I would focus, if anybody has something like that, I would focus on it. I was talking to an attorney the other day and he was saying, I'm a certified family law specialist. I guess there's some way to get first certified in California. And I specialize in representing Asian families, literally from the Pasadena, this area, the city. So people that are very specialized, they're able to have something like that. So that's what I would do. So this person says, so this is actually interesting. This person says, I am a rising 5th-year complex litigation attorney at a top 10 law firm. Wow. I do not want to litigate anymore. Do you think I could transition to litigation strategy and counseling at another big firm? Okay, so this is a good question. So this is very common. Litigation at large firm. A lot of people on this call are probably litigators. And one of the things that people don't like about litigation many times is just stress, the confrontational nature. of it. And it's the negativity, all this stuff. So all this stuff can be very stressful for people trying to work in law firms being litigators. So I don't know why you've reached that conclusion, but after 5 years of realizing that, that's probably the right decision for you. If you just don't like it, you could certainly try another practice setting. You could try different types of work, but you said, I want to transition to litigation counseling strategy at another big firm. So there are certain types of people in law firms that do litigation strategy. Most often they're very smart people. Sometimes they went to Yale Law School and that sort of thing and are able to offer these various insights. I'm not saying that's who you are, what you want to do. I don't know. You have to have some sort of, you can't go to a law firm and just trying to hire you and say, hey, I've done litigation for 5 years, but I really want to be a strategist. And then say, what kind of strategy have you done? Or you can't say, I'd rather do litigation counseling so at another big firm. So what you're saying, I think, is that you want to continue to make a lot of money. And at the same time, you want to do a different type of work where you're just thinking about big issues and things. So I think you have a couple different options. And this is what I would recommend if I was a litigator. I think you have a couple different options. You could, and I'll just give you some options that, for a federal judge, et cetera, you could go into, I'm just giving you different options that I would recommend. You go in-house, you do appellate work, become a judge. I'm just trying to think what else. Look for the government, some options. Okay, so this particular discussion right now, I'm sure this applies to a lot of people because probably 50% at least of the people on this webinar are litigators. So you say, what do I do if I'm unhappy being a litigator? What do I do? Should I continue with this? Or is this not something, or this isn't making me happy? No, I don't like this. And I want to continue making a lot of money doing something. Okay, so these are some of the options that I recommend to litigators that are interested in doing things. And I'll walk through these for you a little bit. I think this is a very good question. And these are the type of questions, by the way, when you ask something like this, if you have a question, you don't think it's a good question, the answer to this question can help a tremendous amount of people because people typically do not understand what they can do when they have these types of issues. So doing a different type of litigation, let's talk about litigation. We were just talking about different practice areas and so forth. So let's talk about litigation. So if you are a litigator and you want to do you can do ERISA litigation. You can do ADA compliance litigation. You can do appellate. You can do class actions, banking and finance, construction, e-discovery. Look at all these international arbitration, mass torts, public interest, real estate, personal injury, defense, and other stuff. You can do all these different types of litigation. And the amount of litigation, it just keeps going. Look, and then you have municipal litigation and all these types of litigation, all these types of practice areas. There is so much freaking litigation you can do. So you can do a different type of litigation. Something may appeal to you more. You can get into, you have to read about you have to look up and look at BCG or other places. You have to look up and decide if there's something type of litigation that may appeal to you. Now, could you do different types of litigation in a different firm? Working in a different firm, would a different firm make you happy? Sometimes your role might be doing one thing and it could be something different. It could be one thing in another firm. And maybe it could be litigation and counseling and strategy, but maybe you have to see what are my opportunities? What appeals to me? What would make me happy? Is there another type of litigation? Some people look at something and they'll say, wow, I've always thought it'd be cool to do this type of litigation. This is what I want to do. And that could change everything. You work in a different firm that's a different size or has different demands or just different types of environments might make you happy. Sometimes when people are unhappy, it's just like the impersonal and a different nature and you're not working with people you like in a law firm. You could start your own firm. I know tons of attorneys that have been in big firms and started personal injury attorney firms and started trust and estates firms and started immigration firms and started different types of firms. You could start your own firm and many times make more money. Sometimes people that are interested in writing and that sort of thing and like that will go to work for federal judges and be career clerk. That's a good job. And you actually make pretty good money in a small town. a lot of people that go to Yale and stuff, the last thing in the freaking world someone from the Yale, et cetera, wants to do is work in a law firm. They don't like it. I think it's a waste of time. So they do things like they go and teach in law schools and that makes them happy. So they get to strategize and read and do all sorts of things. And so you can do that. And it's not as difficult as it sounds to get a job teaching law school. So you can do that. And that's something that may appeal to you. And you may think, I would really love to teach that, or I'd love to teach litigation strategy or something. So you can do that. That's a very powerful thing to do. You can go in-house. There are jobs, most of the jobs in-house for litigators are strategy. You work with the outside counsel to figure things out. You do this, you do that. You could certainly go in-house. You could do appellate work. Sometimes people that don't like going to court enjoy being and the stress, enjoy spending long stretches of time writing appeals. You could do that. So that's another thing. You could become a judge. And so people become judges and often like that. You could start out as a municipal judge and move your way up, or you could network and figure out how to become a judge. That's a job that people love. Or you could work for the government. You could work for state, federal, all these different types of governments. Litigators actually have a ton of options. And so if you want to continue litigating and that's what you want to, or you want to keep using that, there's just all these freaking options you have. And I'm not even bringing them up. Oh, you can become an arbitrator. There's just all these things that litigators do that can really help you and that might help that you can become successful. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is a really good question this person's asking. All right, sorry about that. Because I'm an attorney with a prior marketing degree. I have no specialty to speak of. I could not say no and was thus highly overworked for 2 decades by my employers. Got cancer in my mid-40s. Since then, I'm very protective about my health. I lost my job in 2022 and can't afford to retire yet. I feel I've become unemployable and I'm close to giving up on law. Would creating a powerful USP help me to become self-employed in law and business? Should I use overdoing cancer as part of my story? Okay, so this is a great question. The first thing is I just want everyone to understand what this person is talking about with cancer. It's actually, and I hate to say it, it's very normal. I was just thinking about this when I was part of the office a second ago. It's very normal for attorneys and I think it's probably a little bit more this in here than other professions, but it's very normal for attorneys, I think, because of the stress to get things like cancer, have alcoholism. Often I've actually seen people commit crimes because the stress of the work and being overworked can hurt people. I think it affects your health. Something that I've seen a lot of is, it's people, you get overworked in a law firm many times. And the problem is like this person saying you can't say no, and no one's ever going to tell you to slow down. They literally could watch you coming apart at the seams. And if you're billing a lot of hours, it's in no one's interest to tell you to slow down because you're making the money. So that's a problem. And then sometimes people will just get overworked. They'll give everything they can in a law firm or in some legal environment. And then something bad will happen, or they'll lose their job or they'll quit and then they have nothing and then they feel like they've lost everything. It's very difficult. And I'm not saying this is normal in every job, but it's difficult. I do think bodies and things are more susceptible to things like cancer when people are stressed, when they're not eating healthy, when they're not getting enough sleep, when they're eating the wrong foods and not exercising. Why would you possibly not have health problems if you're living like that? So that's very important to understand as well. If you're treating your body like that, it's not helping you. Okay, so this person can't afford to retire. They feel like they become unemployable and I'm close to giving up on the law. Would create a powerful USP, help me become self-employed in law and business. Should I use overdoing cancer as part of my story? Okay. So the couple of things here. So yes, you can become self-employed. I'll talk about that in a minute. So that's no problem. Easy to do, easiest to do. And so that's the first question. But yes, you can become self-employed. I'll talk about that in a minute. Should you use overcoming something as a USP? So first thing, I'll talk about becoming self-employed because this is very important for people to understand. But the first thing I want to talk about is overcoming obstacles is a basis for a USP. as a general rule, you don't want to tell people about things like that. If you saw in someone's bio that they overcame alcoholism or something, that would make you uncomfortable. If you saw somebody say that they turned their life around after their wife and children were killed in a homicide, or you say something overcame this and that, it just makes people uncomfortable. So you typically things that are highly personal in nature, which are illnesses and tragedies and overcoming substances and things like that, you should never try to use that as something that helps you. Because the problem is that it can make people comfortable, and you don't want to be defined. You do not want to be defined by past tragedies or past tragedies. So that's one of the things I would say. You don't want to be defined by those sorts of things. You want to be defined by something. So yes, you can become self-employed. It was interesting. I was in a secondhand store one lunch about, 5 years ago. And there was this guy I knew that had gone to a good law school. He'd gone to NYU. And while he was in law school, he developed this testing software that allowed people to take tests on computers. And it was cutting edge back then. And so he graduated from law school and worked on this company. And then somehow he ended up having issues with the company. So then he started selling life insurance and became popular. Anyway, so I met him, and I saw him in this secondhand store. And he had decided to go into education law, but suing school districts for reasonable accommodations for people that needed accommodations or something. And so he just developed a specialty. I don't know how he did it. He learned that someone else was doing or something like that. And that became what he did. So that is an idea, the idea of that is developing a specialty in something. And he did that. And I guess he was becoming very successful. I know several attorneys, I say several, 10, that worked in large law firms and became personal injury attorneys. No one taught them how to become personal injury attorneys. They just learned on their own. I know that some of them started big firms. I know people that have done that with immigration law. I know people that have done it with trust in the estates. I know a lot of people that have done it with family law. So yes, it's not that hard to start your own law firm if you want to do that. You can become very successful. It sounds to me like a lot of people are saying, and it's true, that they worked in law firms where they were basically felt like they were overworked and not compensated properly and all these sorts of things. Yeah. So why would you go into something that made you sick and where you felt like you got taken advantage of? You should go into something where you feel you're able to do something on your own. Okay, let me just see here. Okay, this pretty much, I'm trying to look at these questions, and there's not a lot of questions, which is great. Usually these calls at least 3.5, 4 hours. So there's not a lot of questions today. Let me just see here. Let me just see. There's one other question. I guess my follow-up is, how could I market myself to a strategy and counseling type litigation position? Okay, so this is from the one earlier that asked that question. So the way to do that, the way to market yourself as anything is to make your resume look like you are that. How do you do that? So the way you would do that is you would talk about your past experience in the law firm, about your past experience in a way that makes you look that way, makes you look like that. So what does that mean? That means you talk about instead of saying, I was a litigator, I did discovery and motion practice and all that sort of thing, you would basically talk about the things you did that were related to counseling and strategy, and you would lead with that. You would make your resume seem like that's what you did. You could write papers on it or law review articles and put them on your resume. You could take classes in strategy and counseling, which I'm sure I've seen classes like that in business schools and things. You could take online classes and get those on your resume. Some people see that. But the point is, what you need to do in order to get those type of positions is you need to put the scent of that on your resume. And not only do you need to do the scent, meaning this is what people think of when they look at your resume, but not only do you need the scent of that on your resume, but you need to look like someone that would be very helpful in that. If a partner looks at your resume and they say, why would I hire someone? Because strategy and counseling kind of is what partners do. Why would you want to look like someone doing this? Why would a partner want to hire you when this is what partners want to do? Partners want to do strategy and counseling. They want to think case strategy and how do things laid out. This is what they do for their clients. This is what happens when you become a partner, is you get to do strategy and counsel people on that. So you have to say, why would someone hire a fifth-year associate to do that? You have to think about it from their standpoint. But if you really want to do it, that's what I would do. I would make your resume look like that. I'll tell you just a couple quick stories. I deal with people that will pay me to help them strategize about their resume and so forth. And so I remember not too long ago, I was working with someone it doesn't matter where they work. They wanted to do data privacy law. And they had a couple jobs. I think the most recent one was working as an attorney for someone in their family and helping them with some stuff. And then the previous ones were maybe doing like insurance defense or something. And then they went and got there's some sort of privacy certification you can get and you take courses. So this privacy certification, 2 jobs in insurance defense, and then this 1 job working in-house. So what did I do with that person? How could you possibly make that person attractive for data privacy work? So what I did is I made them call themselves general counsel at this family company, which, and basically made them talk about all the data privacy work they did there, which wasn't that extensive, but to lead with that is what they were currently doing in their in-house job. And then I made them talk about their litigation experience in a way that they brought to light any privacy related matters that worked there and led with that. And they talked about the description, had the data privacy certification on their resume, and talked about how they did data privacy in as many possible ways as they can. So anytime you want to do a certain area of the law, you need to look like that's who you are, and people need to pick that up when they talk to you, and it needs to be on your resume in a way that draws attention to. Okay, so that I think is all the questions. This has been the least questions that I've had in one of these webinars in a long time. I hope these answers are helpful. I do this US stuff. There's probably reading and things you can do. I know I've written articles about it. I definitely would recommend trying to frame yourself as that. Looking like a certain type of attorney is honestly one of the most effective things you can do to get a job. Framing yourself in a certain way can really make a huge difference. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call. And that's all the questions. I think, let me just see here. I think that's all we got. I will talk to everyone again next week. Thank you.